The blizzard came faster than anyone in Pine Hollow expected. Snow slammed against the windshield as Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, trying to hide the tremble in his fingers. His two kids, 7-year-old Lily and 10-year-old Noah, sat in the back, wrapped in blankets, unaware of the fear rising in their father's chest. This was their first Christmas without their mother, and Ethan had promised them a peaceful night at their grandfather's cabin. But the storm swallowed the road, turning everything into a white, howling emptiness. Ethan's heart pounded as the truck's tires skidded on the frozen path. He whispered to himself that everything would be okay, but deep inside he felt the weight of a year full of broken promises and sleepless nights. Noah leaned forward, sensing something was wrong, asking if they were lost. Ethan wanted to lie, to reassure him like a storybook father would, but the truth pressed too heavy on his shoulders. When the engine sputtered and died, silence filled the truck, an eerie silence broken only by the distant roar of the blizzard. Cold rushed in as Ethan cracked open the door. The wind lashed against him, stinging like needles. He wrapped his coat tighter and told Lily not to worry, that he'd fix the truck soon, even though he had no idea how. Snow piled up over their boots as he stepped outside, feeling the storm push him back like a living thing. The road behind them was gone, the one ahead invisible. For the first time since he became a father, he felt truly powerless. Losing his wife had been painful, but failing his children now felt unbearable. Lily's soft voice broke through the storm when she asked if Mommy would have known what to do. The question pierced Ethan deeper than the cold ever could. He forced a smile, saying their mother always found a way, and tonight he would try to do the same. He gathered the kids out of the truck before it froze completely, carrying Lily and guiding Noah by the hand. They needed shelter. Any shelter. He didn't care where, only that he kept them alive through this brutal night. The snow grew thicker, swirling like ghosts around them as they struggled forward. Ethan tried to spot familiar trees or markers, but everything blended into a white, shifting blur. Noah stumbled twice, and Ethan lifted him with shaking arms, pushing his tired muscles beyond their limits. He whispered encouragements, even as fear gnawed at him. Each step felt heavier, each breath colder. He wondered if fate was punishing him for every moment he hadn't been strong enough this year, for every tear he hadn't wiped fast enough from his children's eyes. Just when desperation began to claw into him, a faint glow appeared through the storm. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, a mirage caused by exhaustion. But as he pushed forward, the glow brightened. A warm, golden shimmer flickered behind the wall of snow, like a lantern calling them home. Ethan felt hope stir, a fragile, trembling hope, but enough to make his legs move faster. Lily pointed toward it with wide eyes, her voice cracking with sudden excitement. As they drew closer, the glow revealed itself to be a small wooden cabin, half buried in snow, smoke rising from its chimney like a promise of warmth. Ethan almost fell to his knees from relief. He pushed the stubborn door open, calling out to see if anyone lived there. But the cabin was empty, its fire burning gently as though someone had just stepped out moments ago. The warmth wrapped around them instantly, thawing their frozen skin and calming their trembling breaths. Ethan set the kids near the fire, rubbing their hands to help the blood return. Lily leaned into him, whispering how much she missed Christmases when Mommy baked cookies and hung ornaments. With them, he kissed the top of her head, wishing he could give her back even one moment of that lost warmth. Noah wandered around the cabin, noticing the simple furniture, the neatly stacked firewood, and a small wooden sign above the fireplace that read, "For the weary, this home is yours." Those words hit Ethan hard. He stared at them, feeling something inside him shift. Maybe fate wasn't punishing him after all, maybe it was guiding him. He remembered the nights he blamed himself for his wife's passing, the nights he cried silently so the kids wouldn't hear. Maybe tonight wasn't another failure. Maybe it was a chance to begin healing. But the cabin, as comforting as it seemed, also felt mysterious, too perfect, too timely, too warm in a storm that froze everything else. Noah called him over to the small kitchen table where a pot of warm stew sat as though waiting for them. Ethan hesitated, unsure if eating a stranger's food was safe, but his children's shivering bodies made the decision for him. The stew warmed their insides instantly, filling them with a comfort they hadn't felt since before their mother's illness. Ethan sat quietly, watching them eat, his heart softening with each relieved breath they took. But as the blizzard outside grew louder, the cabin creaked as if reacting to the storm, or to something unseen. A sudden gust rattled the windows, and Lily gasped, hugging Ethan's arm. The lights flickered, and Noah backed away from the window, saying he felt like someone, or something, was standing outside in the snow. Ethan tried to reassure him, though a chill, not from the cold, crawled down his spine. The cabin felt safe, yet strangely alive, as though it knew they were there. Ethan checked the door, making sure it was secure, then added more wood to the fire. As he did, he found an old photograph tucked behind the logs, a picture of a woman holding a lantern in a snowstorm, her eyes warm and knowing. On the back was a handwritten message: "When you feel most lost, follow the light. It will never fail you." Ethan wondered if the cabin belonged to her, and if somehow she had guided them here. The thought sent a strange warmth through him, something between comfort and mystery. The children slowly fell asleep, but Ethan stayed awake, listening to the storm rage outside. He kept thinking about the photograph, the glowing light they had followed, and the way the cabin felt less abandoned and more protective. He wondered if some things in this world existed beyond explanation: kindness, hope, maybe even guidance from somewhere unseen. He sat by the fire with tired eyes, unaware that this night would change their lives forever. Just as he began to drift into a light, uneasy sleep, a soft knock echoed through the cabin door. Ethan froze, his heart thundering. No footsteps had approached, no shadows fell across the frosted window. The knock came again, gentle, steady, and impossibly calm in the middle of a deadly blizzard. Ethan stood slowly, unsure whether he had found safety tonight, or stumbled into something far greater, and far stranger, than he ever expected. Ethan approached the door with cautious steps, every instinct telling him to protect his sleeping children. The knock came again, this time softer, almost reassuring. He pulled the latch open just enough to peek outside, expecting danger, or perhaps nothing at all. But standing in the swirling snow was a woman wrapped in a heavy cloak, holding a lantern that glowed with the same golden light they had followed through the storm. Her face was gentle, almost familiar, and though the wind howled around her, not a single snowflake seemed to touch her. She asked softly if she might come inside, her voice carrying a warmth that cut through the storm. Ethan hesitated, torn between fear and gratitude, but something about her presence felt safe. When he opened the door fully, she stepped in gracefully and brushed the snow from her cloak, though there was almost none on her. She looked around the cabin with a quiet smile, as though she'd been there many times before. Ethan asked if the cabin belonged to her, but she simply replied that it had belonged to someone who believed in helping lost souls find their way. The woman knelt beside the sleeping children, her lantern glowing brighter as she watched them breathe. She whispered that they were brave, braver than most grown men, and that their mother would be proud of them. Ethan felt his breath catch, unsure how this stranger knew anything about their lives. He stepped closer and asked again who she was. This time she turned to him with eyes that held a depth he couldn't understand, saying only that she was someone who walked where she was needed, especially on nights when hope ran thin. The cabin felt warmer with her inside, as though her presence infused the space with something beyond natural comfort. She moved to the fireplace, adding wood without asking, stirring the flames until they glowed as bright as morning light. Ethan watched her carefully, struggling to decide whether she was real or some divine dream brought by grief and exhaustion. When she invited him to sit, her voice was both gentle and commanding, leaving him unable to resist. She told him that carrying pain alone was the heaviest burden a father could bear. Ethan found himself admitting truths he hadn't spoken aloud since his wife's passing, that he felt he wasn't enough for his kids, that every day felt like failing, that Christmas only reminded him of what they'd lost. The woman listened without interrupting, her expression full of sympathy. When he finally fell silent, she told him that love wasn't measured by perfection, but by presence. She reminded him that he had carried his children through a storm, refusing to give up even when he was terrified. Strength, she said, wasn't the absence of fear but the refusal to surrender to it. She handed him her lantern, telling him to hold it. The golden light inside flickered gently, warm against his palms. She explained that the lantern was meant for those who had lost their way, not just on roads, but in life. She asked him to look closely, and as he did, he thought he saw something move within the flame, something like the shimmer of a familiar smile. It lasted only a second, but the sight sent a jolt of emotion through him. He felt his throat tighten, wondering if grief was playing tricks on his heart. The woman told him that the light had guided many before him and would continue to guide many after. It didn't belong to any one person, it belonged to hope itself. She assured Ethan that his children didn't need a perfect father, they just needed him to keep walking with them through every storm. Her words, simple yet powerful, struck a place deep inside him that had long been numb from sorrow. For the first time in months, the weight on his chest began to lift, replaced by a small but steady sense of peace. Suddenly, the storm outside softened. The howling wind quieted, replaced by the gentle hush of settling snow. The woman stood, saying it was time for her to leave. Ethan tried to ask where she was going, but she simply smiled, telling him that he would understand someday. She touched the lantern one last time, and the flame swelled with radiant light before calming into a warm glow again. She walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the snow, though the storm had almost completely faded. Ethan rushed to the window, expecting to see her figure moving through the clearing. But the moment she stepped beyond the light, spilling from the cabin, she vanished. Not walked away, not faded into the storm. Vanished completely. Ethan stood frozen, unable to comprehend what he had witnessed. When he returned to the center of the cabin, he found the children awake, rubbing their eyes, confused yet comforted. When Lily saw the lantern in his hands, she whispered that it looked like something Mommy would have carried. He hugged both of them tightly, tears slipping down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from a sense of release he hadn't felt since his wife died. He told them that they were safe now, that they would face everything together, and that their mother was still watching over them in ways they couldn't always understand. The lantern glowed softly between them, casting a golden warmth over their small family. Ethan realized that the stranger hadn't just given him shelter, she had given him back the part of himself he thought was gone forever. Morning light broke through the windows, revealing a world blanketed in fresh, untouched snow. The storm had passed completely, leaving a peaceful silence outside. When Ethan opened the door, he saw clear tracks leading back toward the main road, as though someone had carved a path specifically for them. The truck, somehow, was no longer buried in snow. It stood upright and ready, its engine starting effortlessly when Ethan turned the key. He glanced back at the cabin, unsure whether it had been real or some miracle shaped for them alone. As they drove away, the children pressed their faces to the windows, waving goodbye to the little cabin that had saved their lives. Ethan looked into the rear-view mirror, expecting to see it grow smaller in the distance. But midway down the road, when he glanced back again, the cabin was gone, vanished without a trace. A shiver ran through him, but not from fear. Some places, he realized, weren't meant to be found by maps. They appeared only when they were needed most. The road home felt different, lighter, brighter, filled with a hope Ethan had thought he'd never feel again. Noah hummed Christmas songs softly, and Lily held the lantern on her lap like a treasure she never wanted to let go. Ethan reached across the seat and squeezed her hand, promising silently that no matter how many storms life threw at them, they would face them together. And deep in his heart, he knew they carried something far greater than a destination, they carried a renewed sense of family. That night, back at their grandfather's cabin, they lit the lantern and placed it at the center of the room. The golden flame flickered gently, warming every corner with a glow that felt almost alive. Noah said it looked like a little piece of Christmas magic, and Lily whispered that Mommy was close. Ethan wrapped his arms around them, feeling whole for the first time in a long while. It wasn't the presents or the tree or the decorated home that made Christmas special, it was this moment, this togetherness, this healing. And as they fell asleep under the lantern's soft glow, Ethan realized that the blizzard had not been the worst night of their lives. It had been the night that gave them something stronger than the home they had been racing toward. It gave them hope, courage, and a reminder that even in the fiercest storms, love would always find a way to guide them back to where they truly belonged.